Hi everyone, thanks for coming along to Joe Houghton's Lightroom Deep Dive, or Lightroom Step by Step, hosted on this new Learn platform. I think this will work out really well and this content's great. And along with Joe's Learn series, we also have Celia's new See, Take, Make series, and Joe also has handouts to support each of these sessions, as does Celia.
Super. Well, thanks Mark, and great to see everybody. Got some familiar faces and I think some new faces as well. I was looking back through the calendar. I think this is my 30th session for conversation. So the first one was back in 2021, and kind of Mark and I have become quite good friends now. So it's great to be back and starting this session, and I've done 730, I think, odd Lightroom talks. Not Lightroom talks on Zoom since COVID started. Danny's got a new alarm clock, keeps going off. I'll turn it off there. And I think this is probably the favourite of all the things that I do on Zoom, because we get to really dig in deep over the 20 sessions. I've done this a number of times for different organizations and stuff, and what we tend to do is it really builds up a little community. You know, we're going to meet every couple of weeks. We're going to explore a different facet of Lightroom. One of the things that we will encourage everybody to do is to share some images for me to play with. Okay, so Mark has created a Google Drive, and I'm sure you've had an email about it, and it'll be kind of, you know, obvious where to do it. So you don't need to do it for this week, but as we go through, and particularly when we get into kind of, you know, the editing ends of Lightroom and stuff like that, if we've got a pool of images from you to play with, it means I don't just have to use all my images, you know, it's nice to see your own images being edited and get some ideas and stuff like that. So it's completely optional whether you send images in or not, but if you do, just send a raw file in and upload it to the Google Drive. I don't know, Mark, do you want to show the Google Drive and stuff?
Yeah, well, I'm happy. What I'll do is I'll pop a link in the chat for the Google Drive so that people can access it throughout the chat screen as well. And
Right.
also available on the same page. But oh, well done, you've got it on here. Organized as ever, Joe.
Yeah. So Mark's created a Google Drive. So when you actually click on that link, kind of this is what you'll see. You'll see a participant's image, raw, please, folder. Yeah. And you can just drag and drop. So if you're on Finder or Windows Explorer or whatever, you can just normally drag and drop into this folder, or you can add by going, I think it's, no, it's not new. How do you add folder? How do you add images? I know. There we are. So if you just hover your mouse in here and right click, yeah, you can file upload. And if you click on file upload, then you're now into your computer, and you can choose that file that you want to upload, and it will come in and appear in here. And what I will do then is each week I will take all the new files that have been uploaded since last time, and I'll bring them into Lightroom on my computer. And what I will do is create under here a folder called, you know, done, if you like, and the stuff that I've uploaded I'll put into done, so I just can see in this folder the new stuff that comes in each week. So that, you know, use that as you will. We'll be going through lots of different areas of Lightroom. So I mean, this is the running order. So, you know, if and you've got this on Mark's page as well in the Learn folder. Okay, so, you know, we're going to do importing and the catalog today. We're going to do file organization in Lightroom and finding your images over the next couple of sessions. We'll do a really detailed session on all the Lightroom settings, the preferences, the catalog settings and stuff like that. And then we get into develop. So developing, the basic develop module, selections using masks, sharing images, global editing and the intersect tool and stuff like that, using other apps like Photoshop and Nik and whatever we want to use and stuff, cropping and resizing, mono processing, stuff that we haven't covered in develop, because there's a lot in develop. And I'm going to show you pretty much everything in Lightroom. So, some of you may not use some of the things that we show because you just want to edit landscapes, or you just want to edit, a certain way or whatever. And that's absolutely fine. But over 20 episodes, it's going to be 40 hours. We're going to really, do the nooks and crannies. Okay. There's no such thing as a silly question. Okay. You come to these sessions to learn stuff and to find out more. So don't let me go past something and you kind of missed it, or you didn't understand what I said. It just didn't make sense. Pop a question in the chat, wave at me, throw something, let us know. Okay. Now, one of the things that I'm also going to do for each session is I'm going to produce a little handout. Okay, so I'll draft this up before the session, and here's the one that I've drafted up for today. So this is going to be covering the Lightroom catalog and the import dialog. That's what we're going to kind of cover today. Okay, so there's a little table of contents at the top of this document, and then this is going to be a set of notes on kind of all the key stuff that we're going to cover. Okay, so this is today's is running at 9 pages at the moment, something like that. That's an A4 PDF, and this will be an optional thing that you can get from Mark's website. So what I will do after the session is I will kind of take note of any of the kind of key questions that came up, of things that weren't in my draft notes, and sometime on Saturday afternoon I will update this set of notes with anything that came up during the live session, and then I'll send that over to Mark, and he can then make it available. Okay, so that's an optional extra. You can get those notes if you want them. And I guess those will go up on the page with the recording, will they, Mark? Or is there a separate handouts page? I don't know.
There's a separate handouts page, but I'll put a link to those on the recording page. So it'll all be in one place. I've got high hopes, Joe. It's going to be so simple.
Yeah. So, I mean, some of you might want that kind of printout, because I know some people like to learn and, kind of retain stuff by reading. Other people prefer, watching the videos and listening and stuff like that. So hopefully, I mean, with my educator's hat on, this thing of, multiple means of representation of material, so that different people can consume it in different ways, it just makes things a little bit more accessible. So we're Mark and I are both professional educators, and we try and do the right thing on this. Yeah, those will be to download and keep as well. So they will build up into quite a big, kind of resource over 20 episodes. Yeah. Okay. So that's going to be the handout. What else? Is there anything else? No, I don't think there's anything else to kind of immediately start with. So let's go to Lightroom. Now, I'm on a Mac. So Lightroom on a Mac and on Windows is virtually identical. The only significant thing is that the preferences and the catalog settings on Windows are under the Edit menu, whereas on Mac, they're under Lightroom Classic. Okay, so preferences and catalog settings are under Edit on a Windows machine. Yeah, but on here, they're under, you just click on Lightroom Classic. So everything else, pretty much, as far as I understand it, should be virtually identical. Now, little word of warning. Lightroom is a big, complicated tool. That's why we're going to spend 20 sessions looking at it and learning about it. Yeah. The recent update to Lightroom for the Mac, this is not applicable for Windows users. Okay. But you have the Adobe Cloud updates your Lightroom application, and we're at the moment, if you've updated as of yesterday, you are on Lightroom 13.1. 13.5.1. There was an update yesterday to 13.5.1. Now, 13.4 was a very buggy update, to the extent that I installed it, did a talk, found that Lightroom wasn't working properly, and promptly went back and reinstalled 13.3. Okay, so if you're on Lightroom 13.4 and you find out in the about Lightroom Classic, okay, so it comes up there, 13.5.1. Okay, I think it's help and about on a Windows machine. If you're on a Mac and you're running 13.4 and you're having problems with Lightroom, or you're running 13.5 and you're having problems with Lightroom, first thing to do is to try updating to the newest release, which is the one that came out yesterday, 13.5.1. And if that doesn't work, then you probably want to go to the Adobe Cloud, Updater app, and you can find Lightroom and you can reinstall an earlier version. And I would go back to 13.3 if you're still having problems, because there's something wrong. They've introduced something, yeah, and it's causing a lot of Mac users problems with the brushes. I'm finding that when I've run Lightroom for an hour or two, it's taking up a lot of system memory. And I'm getting, messages about system application memory out, and I have to basically reboot to clear the memory down. So if you're seeing those problems on your machine, and this is Mac users only, just be aware that it is a known thing at the moment. Now they're clearly trying to fix it, but these things happen. These are big, complex programs, and every now and then, whatever it is, whether it's Photoshop, whether it's Lightroom, whether it's any of the programs, there's these little glitches as they're doing updates. So when I'm aware that that's been fixed, I will let you know, and we're going to spend the next 6 months together. Every other Saturday morning. So that's, but just to let you know that that's going on. Okay. Okay. Right. Dum 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 dum. Now, we are going to, it's lovely to kind of be together as a group over this extended period. If quite a number of you have got your cameras on, that's lovely. If you can turn your cameras on, it's lovely. You don't have to, but it's nice to see people's faces. It's nice for me as a speaker to be able to see whether things are landing. People nod or they kind of shake their head and I can see them scratching their head, and I clearly haven't explained that very well then, or whatever. So if you can keep your cameras on, it's great. If you can't, that's fine as well. I understand it's not easy to do that when you're in a crowded house or whatever. But it is nice to see people's faces and kind of connect rather than just talking to a blank screen. Have I missed anything, Mark? Is there any more housekeeping we need to cover? Is there any housekeeping anybody else wants us to cover in the chat?
I think the only thing I wanted to mention, sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to speak over you. I think the only thing I wanted to mention is that I will aim to get the recordings up in the afternoon after each session. If there's a slight delay, then that will due to be the broadband sort of bandwidth issues, because I export everything in really high definition, and I'm exporting the new shared only screens in HD, which is a lot more bandwidth, but I think it makes a big difference because we all love photography. We want it to be in the highest quality. So there may be a slight delay to some of the video uploads, but I'm hoping to get everything done on the same day. But no further things from me. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, super. And as I say, I will do my best to get the notes updated and out to Mark on Saturday afternoon as well. So they should be up on either Saturday or Sunday if you want the optional notes. Okay, so alrighty. So let's kick off, shall we? So session 1 is to look at Lightroom and the import dialog. So how do we, what is Lightroom? So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And the reason that I spend a bit of time on this, you might say, well, I know what Lightroom is. I've got it on my computer. Yeah. Lightroom does certain things and it does them very well. And it doesn't do other things that people think it does do. And this is very, very important for you to understand. Otherwise, you can get yourself in a pickle. Okay, so let's start with this. So let's start with Lightroom and this thing called the Lightroom catalog. Lightroom is, and I'm going to stop my share actually, because we can just talk to this rather than, you don't need to be kind of staring at a Lightroom screen. Okay. Lightroom is a computer program, and it's basically a big database. Okay, now if you're not a computer programmer, that might not mean anything to you. Okay, and it doesn't have to, because the idea is that you interact with the program and the screens, and you press all the buttons, and what you want to happen happens. But just having a little bit of understanding about what goes on under the hood is quite valuable. I mean, you know, I drive a car. I have no idea how the engine works. Yeah, but I kind of have a little basic understanding, so I know that if certain things happen, you know, I know to call the garage, or I know to put oil in, or whatever. I learned that one the hard way when I was 18 and I got my first car. I drove for about a week, and I'm colorblind. Yeah, so I don't really see red. And there was this little light on the dashboard. Yeah, and it was an oil can, red light. And I drove for about a week, and I was driving down the slip road onto the motorway, and my car stopped. Stopped. Yeah, and I kind of you know, called the AA. I was you know, sensible enough to have AA coverage, and they came out and they said the oil light's on. How long's that light been on? I said, well, I've barely seen it, but yeah, it's about a week probably, and the whole engine had seized up. Car was a write-off. So knowing a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes can be useful, and whatever. So Lightroom is an indexing program fundamentally that also lets you kind of edit and develop your pictures. But the Lightroom is built around this thing called the Lightroom catalog. Most of you are perhaps of an age where you remember going into public libraries. Yeah. And a lot of public libraries still have those wonderful old filing cabinets with the 6" by 4" cards. Yeah, and those lovely drawers, long drawers that you pull out, and they're full of all those lovely 6" by 4" cards. And that's, each of those cards references an actual book on the shelf. Okay, so the catalog is the filing cabinet of cards, but the actual books are somewhere else. Lightroom is exactly the same as that. So the Lightroom catalog is pointing to all your images stored on the shelf on your hard drive or on your external drives. Okay. Now, because when you open up Lightroom, you see the images in the grid view. Yeah, you know. So if I share my screen here, we're in Lightroom. We're in the library module. Yeah, and you can see these pictures. And I can click on a picture, and I can, you know, that'll take me into develop, and now we can develop it and stuff. And a lot of people think that the pictures themselves, the images themselves, are stored in Lightroom. They are not. Okay. So if you only take one thing away from today's session, just understand this. Lightroom is a system that points towards your pictures, but the pictures are not actually stored in Lightroom. Why does that matter? For most of you, when you press quit, when you come out of Lightroom, yeah, and you press quit, yeah, I'll change my preferences so that I can show you this dialog, because I don't normally have this on. Or maybe it's catalog settings. I don't know why they don't combine these two. Here we are, backup catalog. Okay, so if I change those settings, so if I try and exit Lightroom now, it brings up this dialog. Okay, and most of you will have this probably set to, you know, every time, or once a day, or once a week, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Back up, and nobody ever reads the third word. Okay, all they ever read is backup, and they think all my pictures are backed up. They're not. It says backup catalog. Okay. And so many people fall into this trap that they think that when they come out of Lightroom and it says backing up, all their images are backed up, and they're not. So if you've got your images stored on your hard drive, and that might be your C drive of your computer, or it might be, you know, one of the external USB drives that you plug in, or it might be another drive, a network system or whatever. But if your images are only stored on one hard drive in one place, and that hard drive dies, and believe me, they die on a regular basis, yeah, then you lose all your images. And all of a sudden, Lightroom will be full of question marks and exclamation marks because it can't find your images anymore, because that hard drive just died and your images are no longer available to it. So it'll still have a little thumbnail. So it looks like your images are still there, but they're actually not, because the thumbnails that Lightroom keeps just as part of its filing system are not your original high-res images. Okay, and this is a really, really important thing to understand. So we're not going to have time to go through, you know, external backup regimes for your hard drive and your images and stuff as part of this course, because this is a Lightroom course. But one of the things that you need to do is sort out your backups so that you always have all your images stored in at least two places. I mean, ideally, the gold standard is you have your images on two external or two hard drives and one in and a set in the cloud somewhere. Okay, because if your hard drives are probably both on your desk in your home near the computer, well, you know, if your house burns down, you still lose all your images. Okay. Now, I'm not hoping that nobody's house burns down in the next 6 months, but you know, you would lose all your images. Whereas if you also have a copy of your images in something like Dropbox or some cloud storage, even if the worst happened and your house burned down, all those precious images of all your children and your life events and everything wouldn't be lost. Okay. And you also back up your Lightroom catalog as well in the same way, so that it's an insurance. Okay, so if you are in a position where your images are all on one hard drive at the moment, that's a very, very dangerous place to be. If you want assistance in setting up a backup system and stuff, outside of this, I do one-to-one sessions via Zoom, and you can drop me an email, joe.houghton@gmail.com, and we can set up a session, and sort you out. So those are paid sessions. I normally charge 50 quid an hour for those, and we can sort. And I probably spend 5 or 6 hours a week doing that with people. So it's a very common thing for people to kind of ask me about and stuff. But it's really important. This thing of backing up your data. Have you ever lost data, Mark? It's not just me kind of putting the fear of God into everybody. This is it.
No, as I said before, there are two kinds of people in the world: those who have experienced data loss and those who are due to experience data loss. Yes, I have, and I always back up on the cloud as well as a local. But I need a third option as well, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've been talking about maybe running a general conversation talk on backing up, as well. So we might put that in the diary at some point over the next months as well. Claire, yes, I've done a session with Claire. she put that in the chat there. So very, very important just to be aware of that. Okay. How are we doing time wise? It is 11:02. Right. So we're 10:30 to 12:30. Let me just set a reminder then, so we get our coffee and scone in what, about 20 minutes, something like that. Yeah, okay. Scone. Tomato. Yeah. Right. Okay. So if you do this backup when you exit Lightroom, that backs up the catalog. okay, but doesn't back up the pictures. So let me show you what this catalog looks like. Okay, so when you're in, so I'm going to skip this time. I'm going to come back to it. Is it going to exit Lightroom? It is going to exit Lightroom now. Bum, 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 bum. So I'll have to start Lightroom up again. So I'll show you how to find your catalog files. And you need to know where they are, because you need to back them up as well, ideally. Now, is Lightroom shutting down? Looks like it is. But again, I updated to 13.5.1 yesterday, or this morning actually, and I thought, well, maybe they fixed the problems, because this has been happening, this little spinny wheel, for a little while. Okay, so if this continues to happen, I'm going to stop and go back to the break. You see, look, it's even not responding. I'm going to force quit it. Okay, so let's just kill Lightroom off. There we go. Now fire it up again. Bum, bum, bum. And let Lightroom come up. If you need to back your Lightroom system up and you find your Lightroom catalog files, you get to them through the catalog settings. Okay, so once this is finished loading, you go up to either Lightroom Classic for a Mac or the edit menu on Windows, and then in the drop down there, one of the options should be catalog settings. Okay, come on, wake up. There we are, catalog settings. Okay, so you've got 3 tabs here: general, file handling, and metadata. Okay, to find your catalog files, you see where it says location there, that will have a drive folders link. Okay, so in my case, it's under users, Joe, Dropbox, pictures, Lightroom. Yours will probably be something different. Okay. And then there's this little show button here. And if you click on that show button, it will open up Finder on a Mac or File Explorer on Windows. And there's that Lightroom folder, okay, under users, Joe, Dropbox, pictures, Lightroom. Okay, so there it is. Double click on that. And these are all the files that Lightroom's catalog uses. Now, actually, there's only 2 in this folder that are absolutely essential. That's the first one, the one with the little icon on it, the little Lightroom Classic icon. Okay. And the other one is previews.lr data, that one. Okay. So, but this is the absolutely important one here. Okay. So that one, if that gets corrupted or you lose that catalog, then all the links to all your folder files and folders go away. And unless you've done a setting that I'll show you in a little while, you might well lose all the edits to your images, because the edits that you apply to your images in Lightroom are stored, the instructions for those edits are stored in the Lightroom catalog. So keeping your catalog safe is really important. Okay. Now, if you do some edits, let's say you edit a picture up and you mask it and you brighten it and you add contrast and all the rest of it, and then you export that image, you're now creating a new image, a JPEG or a TIFF file or whatever, yeah, and that will persist even if your Lightroom catalog gets corrupted or lost, because that's a baked image, if you like. But Lightroom doesn't make changes to your original image. It looks at your original image, so it's got the link to where it is on the hard drive, and then as you're making changes in Develop, it records those changes as a little series of text files. So exposure plus 50, highlight minus 20, that kind of stuff. And when you next access the image in Lightroom by clicking on the image and going into Develop, yeah, it says, oh yeah, for this image, I've actually got a record of some instructions, some editing that was done before, and it runs those instructions straight away so that you see your kind of edited image in the state that you left it. Okay, but it's only when you then export the image that you now have a persistent new image with all those changes, made. And those are typically the images that we would edit and send into club each week, or to a competition or whatever it is. Okay, so that's all held in this Lightroom catalog file. I have 600 and something thousand images in my Lightroom catalog. Okay, now that's a reasonable sized Lightroom catalog. The biggest one I've ever come across is 5 million images in one Lightroom catalog. Okay, now you may not have that many images in your Lightroom catalog. Don't feel insignificant because you don't have 5 million images. Okay, it doesn't matter how many images you have, but you only need one Lightroom catalog. And the reason for that is that, and we'll cover exporting as we go through the course, Denise. You can export them to another folder, and when we're going through organizing your images, which I think is next session, I will kind of tell you what I do. Yeah, but basically when you export, it'll generally ask you where do you want to export to, and you can decide what folder you want that exported image put into. Okay, so so the Lightroom catalog, you only need one. Now, some people have multiple catalogs, and it's not best practice, and it's not what Adobe recommends. Okay, and the big downside of having more than one catalog is that one of the things Lightroom is really, really good at is finding images. I mean, I can't remember where all my images are and what they all are, and I've got 600,000 of them. You can only search one catalog at a time. And Lightroom has very powerful search and find capabilities. And we've got a whole session on finding your images. I think it's session 3. Yeah. So I'll take you through all those possibilities of how we can find images by date. We can find images by keyword. We can find images by description and by color and by, where they were taken and all kinds of different things. Okay. But when you're searching for your images, if you've got more than one catalog, you can't search multiple catalogs at the same time. Okay, so that's a problem. Polly's just asked a really good question. Okay, when my computer backs up my images, at a set time, they show me that it's been done, and these are shown in my File Explorer. So now there's a couple of things here. If what you mean there is the Lightroom catalog backup, okay, so there is this folder here in the catalog called backups, and when you exit Lightroom and it says backup catalog and you say yes, okay, it creates a subfolder under backups, and that subfolder is the date and the time of the Lightroom backup. Right? And if you do that once a day, you're going to get lots and lots of subfolders with dates and times on. Okay, if it's once a week, obviously it's a shorter list or whatever, but over time you can end up with 10, 20, 100 of those subfolders. Okay. What I generally do is keep the last few, keep the last half a dozen, because then at least you can go back. If anything did go wrong with your catalog, you can go back in time. Yeah. So when I was using that way of doing my backups for my catalogs, I kept one that was about a week old, I kept one that was maybe a month old, and I kept one that was about 6 months old, just in case. Okay. But you don't need to keep all of those subfolders. Okay, so you can go back and you can highlight a good number of those older subfolders and just delete them, and it'll just free up your disk space. Okay, so just keep a few of the most recent ones, and you can get rid of all the others. Okay, And I know, you can't. It's a bit kind of scary deleting those folders when you haven't done it before and stuff. And that's obvious. That's often one of the things that I end up doing in the one-to-ones is helping people, go through and do those kind of cleanups and things like that. Just because they're not 100% certain what they should do and what they shouldn't do. But yeah, no, that's a good question. Okay, so that's kind of where your catalog is stored. Okay, and you see at the moment it says Lightroom catalog, yeah, V13-3, yeah, and quite often when Lightroom releases an upgrade, what it will do these days is every significant upgrade, as part of the upgrade process, it will say, right, we're going to copy your catalog file. So it makes a copy of the current catalog file, and it'll call it now version 13.4 or version 14 or whatever. Yeah. So you end up with two copies of your catalog, the older one and then the upgraded one, and it'll use the upgraded one by default. Okay. So you might find if you come into your Lightroom catalog, there's the current ones, and you can see because they're all saying today, because that's the one where Lightroom is open. But then you might have old catalog files in that folder that go back to 2023, 2022, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Mark, you've got 9 older versions. You haven't done much cleaning up. How many times have you been on my classes, Mark?
No, it's so embarrassing, isn't it? It's
so yeah, and again, those are the things that we can clear down if needs be. So okay. All right. Well, there's no other questions coming up, so I'll just shut Finder down then. Now, so coming back to catalog settings. So just let me tell you again how you get into catalog settings. On a Mac, it's Lightroom Classic catalog settings. On Windows, it's the edit menu, and then I think catalog settings is down here somewhere. Okay. So make a note of this one. This is important. Okay. I want you to do this in your Lightroom. Okay. Bring up catalog settings, and I want you to go to the metadata tab in catalog settings. And in the metadata tab, the third checkbox there, by default, is normally unchecked. I want you to turn it on. I want you to put a tick in automatically write changes into XMP. Okay, now if it's already got a tick, you don't need to do anything. But if that's blank at the moment, just put a tick in it. Okay. When Lightroom is editing an image, okay, so I'm going to assume you've done that now. Okay. Right, so when we edit an image, I'll just pick an image at random, okay, and I'm going to drop into develop module, and I'm just going to start editing so at the start of the edit, when you've never edited an image before, okay, that's the image that comes in, and over on the left hand side you've got this thing called the history, and you see it just says import. I've done nothing yet to this image. Okay, so as I make changes to the image, so let me bring the exposure down, I'm going to change it to black and white, I'm going to drop the highlights and raise the shadows. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, and you see as I did each of those things, look what's happened on this over here. Yeah, it's built up that list of those different things that I did to the image. So if I hover over that bottom line, that's the image as it looked when I imported it. And then if I hover over this one, now that's taking exposure down, minus 1.9 stops. And then if I hover over here, it shows me converting it to black and white. So this is called the history, and it starts at the bottom, and it's kind of like layers. Okay, so it's bringing you up through the instructions that you did. Now, those are part of the Lightroom catalog. They're part of the filing system, if you like. So they're written on the little 6x4 card, yeah, that's pointing to this photo on the shelf. Okay. but I haven't exported this image. So this lovely black and white that I've now got of my shot of whichever cathedral this was, Salisbury, I think, is it, only exists in this form in the Lightroom catalog, because Lightroom has pointed towards this image and then has applied these changes. Okay. But if the Lightroom catalog disappeared, I have no image looking like this on my hard drive. Okay. I've got the image looking like this, but the instructions to turn it into that are only stored within the Lightroom catalog. Now, if I export it as a JPEG or as a TIFF and put it in a print folder or whatever, then okay, now I've got an image of my edited stuff. But until you've done an export, your image edits are all stored only in the Lightroom catalog. But that little change that I suggested to you just now, back in the library module, of going to catalog and turning on the XMP, writes those instructions to a physical file on the hard drive next to the original image. It creates a second little file, and it's the same file name as the image. So, you know, your file names very often, you know, dsc12345.nef or .cr2 or .orf or whatever. Yeah. So when you've turned on write changes into XMP, it says, okay, create a file called dsc12345.xmp. And XMP stands for extendable markup or something. And it's basically just a little text file, yeah, in a standard format that lots of different programs can read. And as you make this change to exposure or to black and white or to highlights, it writes that as a line in the text file. Okay. So now you've got your instructions for your changes stored in two places, one in the Lightroom catalog, but two in this little XMP file sitting on the hard drive next to the computer. So worst comes to worst and Lightroom catalog gets corrupted or you delete it by mistake or whatever. Yeah. Well, if you've got those XMP files having been created next to your original file, when you can start a brand new Lightroom catalog up and you can import all those images again into the Lightroom catalog, and it will, on the import, it will say, oh, there's an XMP file associated with this image. Yeah, I'll also import whatever's in the XMP file, and all your changes come back. Okay, and these text files are tiny, so they don't take up, you know, any disk space at all, really. So it's a little insurance policy, turning on the XMP. Very, very important to do. Yeah. So, is this making any kind of sense to anybody?
Really useful to go through this detail, isn't it? Because I think I don't consider myself confident or overly confident at Lightroom, but I think it's knowing how things work that make you more confident when things go wrong, isn't it?
Yeah. And this, you know, this session is really kind of grounding you a little bit in stuff. So we'll get to all the exciting stuff of kind of, you know, develop and stuff as we go through. But today we're just setting the scene, if you like, and we're just about to start. What we'll do is we'll take a break now, and then what we'll do is after the break we'll do the import dialogue. Okay.
Yeah, super. And there's a question that's just come up from Janet. So shall we hold on to that question until we come back?
This is why you make a separate copy as you make various changes. I
Virtual
don't make a separate copy while I'm making changes. You're just editing the image. I mean, there are ways of doing that, which we will go into as we get into the develop module, things like virtual copies and stuff like that, so that you can, but the nice thing about Lightroom is that, you know, you can always go back through your history. So if you've made that copy and you've decided, no, actually, I didn't want to go to black and white or whatever, you could always come back down through the history to just before you converted it to black and white. Yeah. And you could actually start editing again from there. And everything above that, all the changes above that point would then disappear. Or you could say, well, I just create me a copy as it looks now, and you can kind of branch off and have two versions of your image, one black and white and one color, and try different ways of looking at them and stuff. So as we go through the develop options over the next few weeks, I'll show you how to do all that stuff, Janet. Okay.
Super. In that case, Joe, I shall pause the recording now. Okay, Joe, thank you very much. I'll pass back over to you to start whenever you're ready.
Okay, right. Well, we haven't lost anybody, Mark. Yeah, which is always good. I always think if people come back after the break, that's a good sign. So and I can't see anybody falling asleep. Well, Mike maybe, but but apart from that, we seem to be good. That's great. Okay. I'm going to use lots of shortcut keys during these sessions, and I will tell you what they are as we go along, and I will also send Mark a fantastic little download which covers all the Lightroom shortcut keys, which I didn't put together myself. Another very, very good Lightroom person called Elizabeth Bampton. She's the Lightroom queen. Victoria Bampton. What am I saying? Not Elizabeth Bampton. Victoria Bampton, the Lightroom queen. So there's a little PDF that shows all the Lightroom shortcuts. I would encourage you as we go through the program to try and learn some of them, because they will make your use of Lightroom quicker rather than you having to find everything with the mouse all the time. So G stands for grid. And wherever you are in Lightroom, so here we're at the moment, say we're in the develop module at the moment, editing this image. Yeah. Well, if I now press G, it brings me back into the library module in what we call the grid view. Okay. So the grid view, is this little button on the toolbar down at the bottom there. And it's the one with lots of little pictures in. Okay. Now, if you can't see that toolbar, the T key, T for toolbar, works across all the different modules in Lightroom. Okay, so if there is a toolbar for the module, T will bring it up and will hide it. Okay, and you can also bring up and hide these things using the view menu. Okay, so there we are, hide the toolbar. You see, and it shows you that the shortcut for that is T. So that's the grid view. And then this next view is called the loop view, Loupe, like the old magnifier that jewelers and stuff used to stick over their eyes so that they could see what in more detail. So that's known as the loop view. Okay, so that's the grid view, and that's the loop view. Okay. So if G for grid brings me back into the library in this view. Now, when you're in the library module and you want to bring images into Lightroom, there is a special screen for doing that called the import screen. So you want to be in the library module and you need this panel open, okay, on the left-hand side. So you see we've got these three little arrows, one on the very middle on the left, and the same at the top, and on the right, and at the bottom, okay? And each of those arrows opens and shuts the relevant panel. So, top panel, the shortcut keys for the panels. The top panel is F5, the bottom panel is F6, the left-hand panel is F7, and the right-hand panel is F8. If you want to open and close the left and right panels together, you use the Tab key. Okay, so the Tab key opens and shuts both the left and right panels simultaneously. And the Shift and Tab opens and closes all four panels for you at once. Okay. There will be an exam on this. No, there won't. Oh, no, but you learning these just makes things a bit quicker. So Shift and Tab shuts all the panels down, and then if we just want, say, the left-hand panel open, you can either come over with the mouse and find that little arrow and click it, in which case it now opens the left-hand panel. Yeah. And you see, look, it's kind of all black. It's not doing nice things to me today, is it? This thing. There we are. Right. So there's definitely something a little iffy with Lightroom. I shall be reverting to Lightroom 13.3 after this session. Okay, because I'm still not happy with how Lightroom is working. Okay. Yeah, there is a summary of the shortcut keys, and that I'm going to send Mark that PDF, and he'll put it up on the site. Okay, and that's just a free download from Victoria, so it's okay for us to share it. Okay. So the import dialog. Getting to the import dialog, open up that left-hand panel, and down here we have the import button. So there we go. We click on import, and all of a sudden the screen changes, and we've now got this screen. Okay. Basically, it works left to right. So the left-hand side shows what we call sources. So at the moment, it's showing that I've just got my Mac hard drive here. Okay, but if I put in now to my docking station here, if I put in the SD card, so if you've got a card reader in your computer or attached to your computer, when you put in the SD card, after a second or two, up it will come. Now, mine's just called an untitled. Okay, and if you click on that, yeah, then what it should do is read the card, and the images that are on the card should come up in a grid view just here. Okay, now maybe I got the wrong card out because there's no images coming up. Let me take that one out. Let's see whether it's this card. Give it a second to register the card again. There we go. Click on untitled. Bum, bum, bum. And nothing is happening. Well, it's just wonderful, isn't it?
It happens to all us photographers, Joe. I get this situation with cards as well.
Really? Yeah.
I'm always losing cards too.
Yeah, but that's 2 cards. Let me just put the other one back in the slot and just see whether whether the camera is seeing that those things are there. Saying no card now. Card 1. Okay. Because nothing's coming up. Okay, well, it's not the end of the world that nothing's. Yeah, the cards, the photos are on there. Okay. So what we should be seeing now is a set of the images that are on the card in the middle. Okay. So what we do is we choose whether we want to import everything or whether we just want to, highlight a few of those images and bring those in from, the last shoot if we've got multiple shoots on the card. And then on the right-hand side, we've got all these tabs, and these are things that we're going to use to rename the file, to decide how we handle the files, okay, and rename them. We can do stuff to the files during the import process, like write keywords to the files. Okay, so let's say we've been out for a shoot in the garden and, we're shooting, I don't know, macro flowers or something. Well, then we might put some keywords in here and, put in macro, flowers, garden, bees, whatever. Stuff that applies to all the images that you're going to import in this particular import. Don't worry if you don't do this during import. You can always do it later on in the library module and add more keywords in. But just get into the habit, get into the discipline of during an import, keywording the files with at least the basic keywords that apply to all the files coming in. One of the things that I normally use as basic keywording is country, county, place. Yeah. So then, whenever I do an import, it's, Ireland, Dublin, Lucan, if I'm shooting at home or whatever. Yeah. And over the years, those build up. Okay. and then the general keywords that apply to that whole shoot. And then for specific photos that are different, where you want particular keywords on those photos, you do that later on. Once you've imported them in the library module, you can go in and apply keywords to, you know, images individually or in groups. Okay, so that's that. And then the destination we'll come on to in a minute, which is where pictures are going to go. Okay, right. It looks like finally it has started to read my card. There it is. Yes, the card is now read. Okay, so for some reason there was just a little lag there on it reading the card. There's a lot of stuff on this card. Somebody's just asked, Polly just asked, what's the difference between the untitled in devices and the untitled in files? Nothing. Okay, it's the same thing, because that's why it popped in twice, Polly. Now, in devices, it's just showing you at the top there, that's the last thing that came in. Okay, so that's the last drive that was added. Under here, the kind of, now it's seen as a separate drive. You see it's got that little right facing arrow. If you click on that arrow, it opens up and it shows you the folders, the root level folders on the SD card. And the one that you're always interested in is the DSIM folder. Okay, and if you open that up, depending on how many shots you've taken, normally in a DSIM folder, each of the subfolders can hold 999 images. So if you've got a big SD card and you've shot more than 1,000 images, you'll have more than one folder in here, and they will be, you know, so the next folder would be 186 Fuji, 187 Fuji, yeah, and my camera's set up to say Fuji on the end of these folders. So if you just wanted to look at the latest images that you'd shot and you had multiple folders in the DSIM, you could just choose the last number folder and it would give you, you know, the latest images. So this is where you find the images that you want to bring in. Now, as you can see, I've got 1,802 images on that card at the moment. Okay, so there's a lot of images on that card. Yeah, I just shot these top three. So let's have a look at the toolbar. Okay, at the bottom here. Okay, so the grid view shows me all the images. If I highlight an image and I click on the loop view, it just shows me that individual image. Okay, so there's just a shot that I just took with the camera of all of you on my other screen. Okay, so if I come back to the grid view, yeah. Now you see they've all got ticks on. Now that's because they're all checked. If I uncheck them all, it takes the ticks off. And the only ones that will be imported when you press the import button bottom right, when that eventually lights up, will be the ones that have got a tick next to them. So if I've got multiple shoots on the card and I only want to bring in, say, these three that I've just shot, yeah, I'm going to uncheck all, and then I'm going to find the first one that I want to import, and then I'm going to go and find the last one that I want to import. So let's say it's these five. Danny, I'll bring him in as well. So now I hold the shift key down and click on this image here, and then it'll select everything from the first one that I selected to this one. Shift and click. Okay. If you don't want all of the images bringing in, you can just hold the Control or Command key down. Okay, so it's Command on a Mac, Control on Windows, and that lets you choose non-contiguous images, okay, you know, that aren't next to each other. So shift and click chooses everything from the first image to the last image. Hold the Control or the Command key down and you can, you know, choose images like this. Okay, so I'm going to do shift and then shift and click and select these five. Now those five are selected. If I just pop a tick in any of those five boxes, they will all get a tick. Yeah. And you see when I ticked them, watch what happened in the bottom right of the screen. The import dialog now kind of, because now I've got five ready to import. when nothing's selected, there's nothing to import. Okay, so that's that. So there's your source. Now, very important up here, copy as DNG or copy. The other two at the moment are grayed out. By default, you want copy, not copy as DNG. Okay, it's not the end of the world if you leave it as copy and as DNG. All that will do is copy your files in the format that they're in on the camera. So mine's a Fuji, so they're .raf. Okay, if it's a Nikon, it's .nef. If it's a Canon, it's what .cr2, I think, is it? So whatever your dot is, yeah, ORF I think is Panasonic, is it? I don't know what Ricoh is. Mark will know. But whatever the suffix is, okay. So if you just copy, it will bring those files in the raw file format that you're shooting on the camera. And if you're shooting in JPEG, it'll bring them in as JPEG. Okay. Oh, I didn't realize your Ricoh could be set to DNG. Okay, so then it wouldn't even need to be converted. Now, if you want to convert your files from whatever their current format is into DNG, which is the Adobe RAW file format, you can do that by copying as DNG, in which case it copies them in their current format, and then when they're on your drive where you want to send them, it then converts them to DNG and deletes the original. Okay, so then you end up with DNG files on your hard drive. Problem is that takes a long time because it's copying and then it's transforming and deleting. Okay, and there's not really any reason to do that. The Lightroom will process your raw files just fine. About 3 or 4 years ago, it did a little bit better processing in DNG than it did processing some of the other raw file formats. So it kind of made a bit of difference. When I was shooting Nikon, which is .nef, for a long time I did convert copy as DNG because the DNG file, once it's converted, is about 20% smaller than the NEF files. And I was shooting Nikon D810 and D850, and those files were 40 or 50 megabytes. So I was kind of like saving 10 megabytes every time I imported an image. And that mounts up when you're importing thousands and thousands of images. But to be honest, these days, the hard drives that we've got are so big that it's not really going to make a lot of difference. So I would normally just copy now, not copy as DNG. Move and add aren't available when you're pulling in from an SD card because it's assuming that you want to copy stuff from the SD card onto a hard drive. If you bring in from, say, an external hard drive instead of the SD card, let's say you plug in an external USB drive and that's got loads of images on that you want to import, then you've got the option of moving them, actually physically moving them from one drive to another, or simply adding them to the Lightroom catalog in situ. So it doesn't move them at all. It just kind of adds entries in the Lightroom catalog to the files that are on your external drive. Okay, but for the normal import, which is going to be go out, shoot some shots, bring your SD card in, yeah, and import them from the SD card, then you want copy. So generally all photos, if you just want new photos, Lightroom will keep an eye on stuff that's been imported already, but to be honest, I normally just have that as set to all photos. Okay, it's got a breakdown here of how many photos. Now, if you break it down by destination folders, if there are multiple folders on the SD card, it will show you the photos in the folders, but I don't really use that. So this is normally set to all photos. But the real action is over on the right hand side. The only other things on the toolbar are you've got the ability to sort the view here. Okay, so you can see I just shot those 3 and the 2 of Danny yesterday, I think. Those are at the top because I'm on a Z to A sort. So ZA is the latest images that were shot are showing at the top, and I'm showing by file name. and your camera will normally name your images sequentially. Okay, so your camera's naming your images sequentially, and then you're sequencing the way they're shown with the most recent images at the top. So down here, you can click that as A to Z. Now that's the oldest image on the card showing. Yeah, and if I scroll all the way to the bottom, there's the newest images, because that's now an A to Z sort. Okay, so Z to A and sort by file name. You can sort by capture time, you can sort by media type, or turn the sort off completely, it's up to you, but I generally have that set to Z to A and file name. Okay, and then if you want to see the thumbnails a bit bigger, you've got a little slider there. Okay, so you can slide that up and you can see the images quite a bit bigger. So, you know, sometimes you might want to just vet the images before you bring them in and say, well, okay, you know, that one's okay. I don't want this one, so I'll uncheck it. Yeah, in which case, you know, so just don't shoot right. So I'm going to check that one. Yeah, no, not going to check that one. Yeah, I'll bring that one in. I only need one of Danny. I'll just bring that one in. Yeah, so that'll now just bring those three in. Okay. Okay. Bum, 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 bum.
Oh, we've had a quick question. If
Yeah.
actually, I think you're about to read it actually.
So if you shoot RAW and JPEG,
yeah, Jane said if you shoot RAW and JPEG and they use JPEG for transfer to phone for quick editing and posting, which I do as well, would you just import the RAW files for that maximum quality?
Yes. I don't shoot RAW and JPEG. I just shoot RAW because I would. But in that's a really interesting use case, isn't it? Yeah, so you shoot RAW and JPEG and you're using the import into your phone or whatever, just for kind of, you know, quick social media posts. Here's where I am today kind of thing. You know, Mark's always doing that, isn't he? You know, he's flying around on all these conversation meetups in Leiden and Amsterdam and all these wonderful places. Yeah, what a jet setter. I don't know. Yeah, so that's great for that. Yeah, but then, you know, the RAW files, you're going to bring those into Lightroom. That's where you're going to do your kind of perhaps more serious editing and stuff like that. So yeah, you don't really need to bring the JPEGs in as well. You can do, and then you've got the option of showing both of them next to each other in the grid view, or you can kind of stack them on top of each other, and you can just see the RAW file on the top, but the JPEG's underneath. That's an option, but I generally just use Lightroom for RAW files. Yeah. Okay, good question. Right, so let's have a look at the right-hand side now. Okay, so we've got a number of tabs, and Lightroom works with these tabs on all the panels. Okay, so where you see an arrow facing into the right or into the left like this, yeah, and if it's lit up, so you see that Macintosh HD one there is lit up. If I click on that, it means there's something underneath it. Yeah, there's more underneath it. So file handling. Yeah, I can open that up and then it's now a down facing arrow. Okay. Some people might not see all four of these tabs. If you move to the left hand side of, you know, so next to where it says file, just on the same line there, and right click, yeah, it will bring up all the tabs and they've all got ticks next to them. Now, if in your Lightroom you don't see these four tabs, you know, some of them are missing, just click to the left there, and maybe one of those is unticked like that. So now I've unticked file renaming. It's not that you can't see it anymore, but I can bring it back by going to any of the others, right clicking, and then just checking it, and it brings it back in. So if there might be a tab that you never use, yeah, and you just want to hide it, so you can do it doing that. But some, you know, I've had panic phone calls from people saying, you know, I know I can rename my files, but I've lost the ability to do it in import and stuff. And it's always that. It's always that it just got hidden by mistake, like that. So file handling, build previews. I would recommend that you set that to minimal, because Lightroom will build the previews on the fly. Okay, so it speeds up the import process if you just set that to minimal. These other ones are bigger previews, but that means that it's got to generate those previews for every image as it brings them in. And that's going to slow the import process down. And normally we want to kind of get them in, don't we, so that we can start looking at them and editing them. Okay, so leave that at minimal. Don't check build smart previews. You don't need smart previews for all your images. And we'll look at what smart previews are and when you would use them in a future session. Okay. You can check don't import suspected duplicates, and then what it will do is it will grey those out in the import dialog if they're already in your catalog. But sometimes I want to actually import things that I've imported already, maybe into a separate folder somewhere else for some reason. So I just normally have that unchecked. Okay, I like because otherwise it kind of is taking the control away from me. If you really want to make a second copy of your images as you import them, and some people might, import to their main edit drive, and they might import straight to a backup drive or something like that. Some professional photographers would do this. They'll import out to 2 drives so that the news photos that they're shooting are actually immediately on 2 drives. You can do that using make a second copy. To be honest, I don't use that, but there it is if you want it. And if you want to, you can add the photos straight into a collection. We'll talk about collections next week and the week after. But again, I don't normally have that checked. So the only thing in file handling really is set that to minimal. Okay. So I'm going to shut that one down. So let's have a look at file renaming. Now, you've got the option. By default, this is turned off. So the files will come in with whatever the camera file name is. Okay, and some cameras let you set that file name format up, and others it's just going to generate, some meaningless letters and numbers form. So what I like to do on import is to rename my files. So I check that box, and then if you click that little double arrow there, there's an option to edit. So when we edit, we get this file name template editor that looks very, very complicated. So let's just get rid of that completely. Just get rid of all that. Okay. So this is what you start with. Yeah. Now, it's going to be a .raf file because we're not converting it. But now what do we want the file name to be once it's been imported? So the image name options up here are file name and file name suffix. So you generally, somewhere in your file name, you want the original file name that comes in from the camera. Okay, so you choose file name here and insert, and that's going to insert this token called file name, and that's my camera generated file name, Joe xt5, and then a four-figure number, yeah, which increments 1 at a time as I take more pictures. .raf. Okay, but what I like to do is I like to put in front of that, so I can move my cursor to the front of that, yeah, and I want to insert the date and time, the date that it was taken, because then in Finder and when I'm looking at things in other programs and stuff, the file names are automatically going to be sequenced for me in the folders. So if I come down to where it says additional here, yeah, and I click on this down arrow here, yeah, I've got various options for date and time and hours and minutes and seconds. And the one that I use is this second one, YYYY Now, the reason that it's that way round, so that's going to bring in 2024, 09, whatever today's date is. Yeah, I can't remember what today is, but 04, is it? What's the date? I have no idea. 07. Okay. Right. So date in that format. Okay. So I'm going to insert that. So you see it's going to bring in 2024, 09, 07. And then I'm going to do space, dash space, because I just like spaces and dashes. Okay. So that's that. And then at the end, so click to the end, space, dash space, Joe Houghton. Okay, and that's just going to be normal text. So when I import these images, when they're on the hard drive, wherever I put them now, each file image is going to be the date, and then the original file name from the camera, and then -Joe Houghton. Yeah, and then if that image ends anywhere, it's got my name on it as well. Okay, so that's what I generally have set up. Once you've set that format up and you're happy with it, come back up to the top, yeah, and save that as a new preset, and just give it a name. You know, so you see, so if you save that as a new preset, yeah, and then you can call it, you know, Joe, you know, 2024. I think I've already got Joe 2024, so I'll say Joe H 2024. Okay, there we are. Create. Done. And now that comes up in that template window, and that will persist until you change it. So next time you open up import, that will be there. And so you just do that once, and then it just does it for the whole year. And then you update it for the new year if you want to, the next year or whatever. Okay. Leave as is, the extensions, just leave them as they are. That's fine. So that's file renaming. Now, apply during import. We'll go into develop presets and stuff later in the course. But if you have presets, let's say you've got a preset that automatically converts an image to high contrast black and white, okay, then you can set these up, or you can buy presets and install them, and they're available in the develop module. This allows you to apply any of those presets. So if you've set your own up, they're under user presets. You might have other presets, you know, that Matt Kloskowski, there's a few of his presets, and some from Loop Deck and you know, whatever, okay. And then there's some that come with Lightroom. So if you want to apply a black and white high contrast, okay, then the settings that are stored in that preset will automatically be applied to the image as it's imported. So if I apply that, when we import these three images, they're going to come in and they're going to then be converted to black and white high contrast. And we'll see that once they've been imported. All right. Keywords. So I'll call this conversation. Yeah. You know, and Saturdays. Okay, whatever. Okay, there we are. And you know, I typically do my Ireland, Dublin, Lucan. Okay, so those are going to come in as well. Right? So that's applied during import. Now, if you've fallen asleep in the last 20 minutes, wake up. Okay, because this is really important. The destination is where we're going to put the images. Now, if you've not been to one of my talks about importing before, your destination is probably set to organize by date. Okay, and you need to change that straight away. So under destination, if it says organized by date and it's got some kind of date format under here, this causes more people more problems in Lightroom and with their Lightroom organization than anything else, because you end up with folders and folders of year and month and day with other years and other months and days and stuff underneath them, and people get in a right mess. So change this organized by date. Click on the little two up and down arrow next to where it says organized there, and change that into one folder. Okay. If you only do one thing as a result of this morning, do this. Okay. And the XMP that I told you earlier on. What that does is stops Lightroom creating all these horrible automated subfolders of dates and months and years and things, and it only puts the images where you say they should go. Okay, so where should they go? I maintain a structure on my hard drive under my pictures folder of year, month, and then the days within the month where I'm importing. So let me just bring up Finder for a minute. Let's find it. Okay, and let's find my pictures folder. And here's my 2024 year folder. Okay, so within 2024, I have a month folder. Okay, so if I'm shooting, you see, I haven't got a September folder at the moment. So I would typically create one of those. I can either do it in Finder now, or I can create it in Lightroom in a little while. So I'll create this now maybe, or no, I'll do it in Lightroom in a minute. Okay, but 01 January, 02 February, 0. I didn't shoot in March by the look of it, so there wasn't a March folder. April, May, June. Why am I putting 01 in front of these? Because otherwise they will sort in alphabetical order, and that does my head in. Yeah, you know, my OCD kicks in big time at that point. And I'm saying, well, you know, January should be the first one, and February shouldn't come before January. So 01 January, 02 February, and it's got to be 01, not 1, 2, 3, because otherwise then the 1 and the 10 and the 11 come together. Okay, so you end up with November and December after January. So 01 in front, and then the year at the end. Okay, and then within each month, yeah, I'm going to generally have the day that I did a shoot. So you can see in July, on the 3rd of July, I went to the Salty Islands. And get into the habit when you create these shoot subfolders of just giving them a short 2-3 word name, and that becomes searchable later. You know, so you can search by the folder names as part of the text that's associated with all the images in that folder. Yeah, and sometimes that's all you'll need. Yeah, so it'll let you find stuff. So because whether you think about it or not, you'll forget when you took an image, or you know what you were doing on that particular day or whatever. When did I do that marbling with April? Yeah, well, you know, all I have to do is just type in the word marbling in Lightroom, and it would bring me back to June and show me that on the 3rd of June I did marbling, and we had a very wet and mucky day, creating marbled end papers for books and stuff like that. Okay, so let me come back now into Lightroom. So here we are, pictures 2024. Okay, now you see it says 08 August there. Well, these shots are September the 7th. So I need a September folder, don't I? So I can right click on 08 August here, and I can create a new folder. So it's going to fire Finder up for me, and I'm in 08 August there. Yeah. So I actually want to be back in 2024, and I want to create a new folder, and I'll call that 09 September 2024. Okay, and choose it. So what I should get back under 2024 now is, it's playing up. It's playing up. It should give me my September folder now. Okay, and it isn't doing, which is I didn't create it under August, did I? No. Okay. Again, this is a little bug. This is a little bit. It would normally now be showing me. Yeah, what a pain this update. It really is causing some problems, Mark. So we should see a 09 August 2024 folder in there at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to assume that these are. Oh, there it is. I did create it under August by mistake. Okay, right. So there we are. We've got our own. It's taking a while. It's appeared now. So choose the month where you took your images. Now this is where organize into one folder now helps, because at the moment, if we do nothing else, those images will just be put in that month folder. But within that month folder, I now want to create a day folder. So we'll call it today. So you see it up here, it says into subfolder. You check that box, and now you type in the day. So 07 September 2024, conversation, Lightroom, step by step. Okay. And you see now under September, we have a little starred folder, and in italics, it's saying 07 September 2024, conversation, Lightroom, step by step. And that's indicating that that folder doesn't yet exist, but it's just about to be created. And when I press the import button, it will create this folder here, the one under 09 September, and the images in the import will go into that newly created folder. So you get complete control over the folder that your images are going to be put into. And if you've already got a folder and you want the images to go into that folder, you just select it. You don't need to create a subfolder like I've just shown you, and it will go into the folder that's currently highlighted. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And if it doesn't, you're going to have the video to go back over, and because I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you very quickly. So it's working for Claire, that's wonderful. But if some of you are thinking I'm never going to remember all this, okay, that's why we record the sessions and make these available to you, because you can go back over them, and that's why there will be pretty detailed notes in the optional handouts as well, where I'm going to cover all this material in written form as well. Okay, so I'm going to now hit the import button. So now we get put back into the library module, and if I just drop the top panel down, you'll see that there's a job going on now. So it's copying and importing those photos, and after a few seconds, it will have created that subfolder, and it will be importing the photos into that subfolder. So here it is, and now you see down under pictures, you can see 09 September 2024, bottom left-hand corner, and then it's created the 07 September 2024 conversation folder, and there's our 3 images in it. And if we click on that folder, there's our 3 images, and we can edit them. Okay. So that's the import dialog. So in the library, it does physically move the right. Okay, Jane. So what we've done just now is an import from an SD card. So we've done 2 things with the import from the SD card. Okay, we have copied the physical images, the .raf images, from the SD card, and we've put a copy of those images from the SD card onto a new folder on my hard drive called 07 September 2024 conversation. Yeah. So those images now exist now on my hard drive. They're taking up space on my hard drive. And while we've done that, we've added those photos into the Lightroom catalog. So the Lightroom catalog says, yeah, look, there's an image of Danny. Okay. But that's just a thumbnail. Okay. Pointing to, and if I go into Finder now, so that's pointing to 2024, 09 September, 07 September 2024, and it's that one there. I think it's the first one. Let's have a look. Danny is JXT 58982. Okay, so that's whichever one is the 58982. Yep, there it is. .raf file. Okay, and you also notice that in the same folder, underneath it is the same file name .xmp. Yeah, so that's that little sidecar file that it creates now, because you told Lightroom to create sidecar files. And if I open that XMP file let me see if I can open it just as a text file. There we are. Now you'll never ever need to do this, okay? But that's what the XMP file has got in it. It's just a set of text things about the image. Okay, so all that stuff that normally is stored about the image in the Lightroom catalog, And you know, so it's got information about the camera. You see Fujifilm there, X-T5, yeah, the serial number of the camera and when it was taken, what lens was used. So this was my autofocus 2.8 lens, 27mm lens. So all this information that's stored as part of the image is also now written into this separate text file. So if my image got kind of corrupted later on, or the catalog got corrupted, yeah, I could rebuild it because it's all held in the XMP. I don't know why they don't make it, you know, turned on by default in Lightroom. It just seems crazy because it's so useful. But anyway, that's what it is. So that's why when you go back into Windows, you know, File Explorer or Finder in the Mac, you'll see not only your image files, but you'll also see the XMP files next to them, and that's what you want to be seeing. Okay, and Lightroom will go back. Once you've turned that on, it will go back and it will build XMP files for all the other images in your catalog over time. Okay, so you might see in the top left-hand corner there's a job running that's building XMP files, and that will run for a few hours. Probably if you've got a few thousand images in your catalog, just let it run. Doesn't matter. Okay, so that's that. Okay. So yeah, Jane, that's a really good comment, Jane. I'll try and get into the habit of using Lightroom import to organize my hard drive rather than doing it independently first. Now, there's not to say you can't do it independently first. And, you know, sometimes when I'm assembling, you know, images from multiple hard drives for somebody, we will say, right, let's find all your hard drives and we'll copy them all over onto one big drive, put them under a pictures folder, blah, 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 and then we'll do one import into Lightroom, because it's kind of quicker to do that. But on a general day-to-day, kind of from now on, yeah, you should be using the Lightroom import dialog to bring your images in, because then Lightroom knows about all your images and knows where they are. If you do stuff to images outside of Lightroom, let's say you move images from one folder to another, or you rename a folder, or you move a folder from one drive to another, what you then get in Lightroom is, well, last time I opened up these images were in 07 September 2024, but since I last was in Lightroom, yeah, you've copied those to another drive, or you renamed that folder or whatever. Well, now all these images would have a little exclamation mark next to them, because the Lightroom catalog, the filing system, says, well, last time I looked, that image was on this, in this folder, on this drive called this. It doesn't exist anymore, it's gone. Yeah. So you still see the image kind of thumbnail, but when Lightroom tries to follow that link, the link's broken. Okay. So if you do moves and copies and stuff within Lightroom, it maintains the catalog integrity and the links and stuff like that. There are ways of telling Lightroom to rebuild, to rescan folders and rebuild the links. Okay, and we'll cover those as we go through. But for now, do your imports using Lightroom if you can from now on, because it just makes everything simpler. And do you see in the grid view now? Yeah, and I'll make the thumbnails a bit bigger. You can see on the right hand side there. Yeah, you can see these are all black and white. Yeah, and that's because when it had done the import, it then applied the black and white preset. Yeah. Now, does that mean that I've lost the ability to kind of go back to that in color? Not at all. So if I now select Danny here and say, okay, let's go into develop, yeah, then we see this in develop, and you can see that black and white is turned on, and the blacks have been pulled back and the whites have been pushed up a bit. Yeah. But if I want to undo that, yeah, and you know, kind of still get back to the color, the original raw file is still in color. Okay, so I can turn off black and white and I've still got my color option. Yeah. So you never, Lightroom is what's called a non-destructive editor. So any changes you ever do in Lightroom, you can always undo. You can always go back through the history. Yeah, you're never actually changing the underlying original raw file. And you can always undo things that you've done, which makes it a very, very safe space to play. Yeah. Whereas Photoshop, if you don't know what you're doing, can be a very unsafe place to play. Because if you're doing stuff on a layer without having kind of duplicated a layer, for instance, you can actually be editing the original image. And that can be a little bit more tricky. Now, I mean, Photoshop lets you do amazing things that Lightroom can't do with layers and composites and all the rest of it. But if you're just doing basic editing of what you shot, you know, color editing, tone editing, that kind of stuff, for many people, Lightroom is a safer space with a much lower learning curve, which I guess is one of the reasons why a lot of you have come. So there we go. So we are just about on 12:30. Did I miss anything, Mark? Were there any other comments? And yes, we have got a brilliant series on Photoshop. Celia is amazing. If you've not come across Celia Henderson, so if Photoshop is something that you want to master, you want to get onto some of Celia's sessions as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We don't have any questions actually, Joe. I think it's been really effective in responding to those questions throughout as well. And we don't have any questions stored at all.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm just going to make a. Can I grab that chat right now? Let's have a look. Have you got?
If not, I can download it for you, but give me a second.
Yeah. Just because then this afternoon I can just make sure that I just review the questions that came up.
No problems. I shall pop that in an email to you then.
Super. Thanks, Mark. That's great.
Oh.
Okay. So we are on every 2 weeks from now on, aren't we? So
there's a slight break in December, but it lists that on the page. So we're having a bit of a gap. Joe wants a bit of time off for Christmas. Can you believe that?
Super. Well, look, it's great everybody showed up, and I hope we see you in all the future episodes. And if you can't make it on a Saturday morning, you know, now and then, just pick the recording up. They'll all be there. From next week, I would encourage you to send me some images. You know, if we got 3 or 4 images from everybody, and they don't have to be good images, they don't, you know, and they don't need to be edited, just raw images that you think are, you know, ones that might be interesting to see edited. Yeah. And then if we got 3 or 4 from everybody, that would give me 80 or 100 images. And that's a nice group of images that we can play with as we go through. The other thing was I sent you, Mark, did you get the WeTransfer? So my Lightroom, if I go back to G for Grid, my master set of images that I normally use for this series. Here we are, Lightroom step by step. It's about 400 images. Okay, and I've got all kinds of images in here. These are all my images, you know, raw files and stuff like that. I zipped those all up and popped them in I think it was about a 10 gigabyte file. Yeah, I don't know whether we can make those available through the Google Drive or through the new learning system. But then if you want to play with the images that I edit, on screen, my own images, all those raw files are in that file, so you can download it, and then, you know, when I'm editing, you know, that Stonehenge image, you'll be able to pull that Stonehenge image up and edit it. And some people like that ability to kind of edit the one that I'm editing. But it's also great if we can edit your images rather than just using mine all the time.
Yeah, we can do that, Joe. I'm sure we can get that embedded. And also, Jane's just come up with a great idea about creating Google Calendar links automatically as well. So that's a bit of homework for me. Keep these ideas coming, by the way. I've had loads of great ideas today. It's been fantastic. It's been absolutely fantastic. But in that case, Joe, we are at 12:30. People have put lovely comments in the chat. If anybody wants to put any final messages in before we finish, so we won't see you next week. No, it'll be the week after.
2 weeks, yeah.
So, but it's been wonderful, Joe. Thank you very much. And I know we put this together about a year ago, but it's been so worth waiting for.
Well, hopefully it will. Yeah. But yeah, that's good. Super. Lovely. Well, I look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks' time.
Take care, everybody. See you next time, Joe.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.